All right, we're live, back again for storytelling live stream. There is a little bit of a delay, so we'll see as people join us. Please put in the comments where you are. Let us know who's with us today. We're really excited to have you all here. Oh no. Put in the comments where you are. I'm hearing the feedback again. Who's with us today? We're really excited to have you here.
What's going on? Oh no. Bit of live feedback. So I don't know who you can hear.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Could you hear that, or was that just in my headphones?
I could hear that. Yep.
Okay. All right. We're good now.
Me too.
Apologies for the technical difficulties again, but we're on our way. So, okay. Cool. As I was saying, we're super glad to be back here for another week of live stream storytelling, and also really, really excited to welcome Teague with us from Common Digs in Calgary, who's going to be sharing a story with us today. So I'm going to be taking a step back from storytelling for this week and be playing more the role of the host, which means hopefully we'll be able to interact more with you through the comments. So we would love to have more of a chat and more of a discussion with you. I know in the past we've been sharing our stories and doing our own discussion and paying attention to your comments when we can. But with me being the host, I'm hoping that I can we can interact a little bit more with you. So please comment as things come up for you. And yeah, same format. I won't, but the three other storytellers, Danny, Chris, and Teague, will tell a story, and then we'll come together and have a little bit of a discussion about how the story might inspire us and what themes come out for us and how it might connect to things that we can do outdoors and ways that we can be outdoors. And then, yeah, we'd love to incorporate your thoughts into those discussions this time too. So with that, do Danny, Teague, Chris have anything to share before we get going with the day?
Just to say hi to everybody and thanks for stopping by again. I was just saying it's a beautiful day here in the north of England. I was just enjoying a lovely moment outside. So if you've come in to listen to us, then we're very grateful. Honoured, actually. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'll echo what Danny said. Though it's a little earlier here in Calgary, it's a beautiful morning. The robins are singing outside of my window right now, and I would love to be outside, though I will be a little later. I'm glad that everyone is joining us, those who are joining us for these stories.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Great. Well, I asked Chris if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of a grounding intro to our start. Are you able to do that for us now?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'd like to try and bring our minds together as one through a little sort of moments of connection, really. So if you, in your mind's eye, can look out of your window and towards your nearest flower, the one that might be directly in front of your window, or maybe it's off to the right or the left, but just sort of imagine having a quick look at it and the way that flower smiles up at you as it smiles up at the day and all the insects that visit it. And those insects, wherever they come from, they've all got little homes. And I can just imagine one of them zooming back to its own little home. And we have lots of bees and have dandelions on our lawn. So I'm thinking of a dandelion and the bee disappearing back to its own little nest, and the way that bee is sort of communicating with all the other insects and the places that all the different flowers that they've brought those little gifts from. It's a bit like all of us lot. We've all got these little gifts that we bring, and right now we're all sort of collecting here to share some of our gifts. And amazingly, all these gifts come from nature. It wouldn't be without the soil and the rocks underneath our feet, and all the insects and the creatures that live in the soil, and the green things that grow out of the soil and connect with the light from the sun around which we spin in this massive universe, so far stretched away into the distance, this unknowing distance. but when we can connect with the life here on Earth, and we remember the birds in the sky, and the winds that carry the birds and the clouds and move all of those around, and the water that falls from the clouds and runs in the rivers and runs in our blood and runs in all the plants. We remember that we are all connected with all of these elements, and it takes a little spark of fire and a connection to the earth, a bit of air and a bit of light. And there, popping out of our lawn or the nearest bit of grass, is a flower. Whenever we next see a flower, and we can just remember that we're all connected through this kind of subtle web. And right now, we're looking at each other through this web. So welcome. Hopefully all of our eyes meet and our hearts meet and our minds are ready to listen to a story.
Hey, thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And the dandelions have just come out here where I am, not in Ottawa, Canada. So that's perfect timing. It's been very exciting. And I also just want to acknowledge how amazing it is to be connected from all different parts of the world today. I mean, Teague's in the west, or towards the west of Canada, and I'm on the east coast. And then Chris and Danny are joining us from the UK. So, and here we all are in these boxes on one screen together with all of you who are with us, in the chat. So please feel free to tell us where you are today, and just what you might be excited about. And as questions might come up or thoughts, please continue to add them to the chat. And with that, Teague is going to be our first storyteller of the day. So very, very excited. Welcome, Teague. And we'll hand over the live stream stage to you now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, welcome, Teague.
Woo! Hello, everyone. As was mentioned, my name's Teague. I am here in the West, as Caylin said, in Alberta, in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I have actually been born and lived here my entire life. This is actually the house I grew up in. I'm in the same room that has always been my room. And lately I've been thinking a lot about this idea of place and land and how you connect with said land or place. And for me, it's been just walking, going out in my neighborhood, walking about. I do have the freedom to still do so. We're not under quarantine in that sense. So I'm very grateful for that. Or even just getting out in my backyard, listening to the sounds of the robins, listening to the sounds of the black-capped chickadees, watching the clouds in the sky. It's really, really awesome. So my land here, as I think about it, we have two major rivers. We have the Bow River and the Elbow River. And we have beautiful prairies to the east. That's kind of like grasslands. And then we have foothills to the west. And then further to the west, we have the Rocky Mountains. And my story today is all about this land. It goes over from place to place, and the characters kind of go from place to place, but it also speaks to some of the creatures that live in this land: the coyote, the hare, the mouse. With that, I think also it's important to acknowledge that there was also a major creature. It doesn't show up in this story per se, but it does have a little bit of a role, was the bison that used to live here in the prairies. And the peoples of the prairies used to hunt the bison and use the bison, or also known as the buffalo, for kind of everything. They didn't let any parts of the bison go to waste. And I recently had this kind of vision come to me as I was practicing my Qigong this morning, that the bison needed to be mentioned to everyone today, just kind of to bring that memory back, that they used to roam the prairies here in vast herds, hundreds of thousands of animals. And they were essentially eradicated at one point due to tremendous efforts of our governments and collaborations between a variety of groups here. We now have buffalo bison populations returning to wild places. For example, Banff National Park has a new roaming band or group of bison, which is really awesome in the last couple of years. So thank you, Bison Spirit, for coming to me and just allowing me to share that information. But now on to my story. It starts with a long time ago. It's actually going to be based in some geological evidence of this rock right here. This is called Big Rock, Okotoks. And it's here just southwest of the city of Calgary. And it's called a glacial erratic. It's called a glacial erratic because at 30,000 years ago, this area here was under a kilometer's worth of glacier, just pure ice. And when the glaciers melted back, they left these erratic pieces of rock all over the prairies. And the Big Rock, which I showed here, is one of the biggest glacial erratics that was left behind in this land. It's been a little bit of a long time since I've actually visited it in person, despite it only being about half an hour drive away. But I was kind of called to tell this story because it has such a connection to this land. And the story is about a character named Nappy. Now, Nappy was a great trickster. Nappy would play tricks on every creature of the prairies. They actually took great pride in being the trickiest one. They would hide some creatures' coats, their fur, so that they got cold at night. Nappy would sometimes dig holes so that creatures would fall into them. And in this very occasion where this story takes place, Nappy was with their friend Coyote. And Coyote and Nappy wandered along the prairies, looking around to see, who can we trick today? The sun was out, illuminating the prairies, the beautiful beige gold of the grasses, and they saw in the distance that Mouse was trying to hide from them. So they crept down right behind Mouse, and Nappy whispered to Coyote, I think you should scare Mouse. Let one of your great howls loose and you can scare Mouse. So Coyote bent back and howled, and Mouse jumped and skittered away back to its home in the grasses. They both had hearty chuckles, laughs, rolling in the grasses, laughing. And when they finished laughing, Nappy started looking around again. I want to play a trick on someone else. Who else is there? I like that idea of howling too. And they saw that Hare was nearby. So they crept up again on Hare. And Nappy whispered, let's do another howl. That was fun. So Coyote nodded. And Hare jumped and climbed into its burrow as fast as it could. Once again, Nappy and Coyote laughed and rolled on the grasses. It was then that Sun was looking down upon them, and Sun shook its head. It said, Nappy, I'm sick and tired of you doing all these tricks on the creatures of the earth. And Nappy just looked up at the sun and smiled, as only the great trickster could smile. It was then that the sun decided to get very, very bright. The sun decided, I see that Nappy is wearing a great bison robe. It's very thick and very heavy. So I'm going to get very, very hot. And then Nappy will have to be uncomfortable. So the sun began to shine. Let's see. Ooh, yeah. The sun began to shine down on Nappy. And Nappy looked up. It's too sunny. And it's getting way too hot. So Nappy and Coyote began to climb to the cool mountains. And in the cool mountains, the sun wasn't quite as hot. But it was still shining down. And it was still causing Nappy to be uncomfortable and sweat. And Nappy looked around. I need to take off this robe. And they saw that there was a great, beautiful, giant stone on the top of one of the Rocky Mountains. And Nappy thought, I'm going to give my robe as a gift to this beautiful stone. So Nappy took off their bison robe and placed it on the rock. And Nappy and Coyote turned around to walk back down, and they heard a sound. Thank you. Thank you. They turned back around. What was that sound? And the rock came to life. Its eyes opened up, and gravelly rocks moved as its mouth. It said, "Thank you for the gift. This is my favorite thing in the world." Nappy nodded their head. Yeah. You're very welcome. I was too hot wearing it anyways. It's better on you. So they began to walk back down, and that's when Sun went behind a cloud. Nappy began to shiver. It's getting cold. Coyote had their fur to protect them and was adapted to a variety of different climates, whereas Nappy wasn't. Nappy said to Coyote, "Coyote, go back to that rock and bring me back my robe." But Coyote said, "No. It's dishonorable to give a gift and then take it back." Nappy said, "Well, I'm getting too cold. I need to get my robe back." So they started walking back up the mountain, but they noticed that Coyote wasn't following. "Are you coming?" Coyote said, "No. It's dishonorable to take back a gift once it was given." So Coyote went back down to the foothills and to the prairies as Nappy continued to walk back up the mountain. When Nappy approached this great, beautiful rock, they asked, "Could I have my robe back?" And the rock said, "But it's my favorite gift. It looks so beautiful on me." Nappy looked left and looked right, looked up and down, and saw that Sun was still hiding behind the cloud. No one was watching except for this rock. So Nappy grabbed the robe back, put it on their body, and began to walk back down. And the rock said, "No, no." And the sound of "no, no, no" followed Nappy as they walked back down the mountains. Now, Nappy was still feeling a bit of shivers, but it wasn't cold. It was this feeling of guilt, this feeling of kind of doing something wrong. And that's when Nappy heard a sound. Nappy looked back and saw that rock had dislodged itself and started rolling and rolling down the mountains. And Nappy looked. This rock was so huge, they didn't have anywhere to run except for down and away. So they ran and ran down the side of the mountain as this big, giant rock chased after them, after the robe that Nappy had stolen. It's at this time that the sun returned to the sky. The clouds melted away, and Sun watched on as Nappy ran and ran. The Sun thought, Nappy deserves this. They have done so many tricks, and they have done a dishonor to the rock. So the Sun didn't help. Nappy continued to run. At this time, they were at the foothills, and they started asking all the foothills creatures, "Deer! Antelope! Help me, help me! Coyote, help me!" But the creatures just stood and watched. They thought to themselves, "Nappy, you've tricked me too many times. This could be a trick. I'm not going to help you." So Nappy continued to run and ran into the prairies now, the flat grassland. And they thought the rock could slow down. It's not quite as steep here. So they thought they'd take a break, but the rock continued to rumble. And Nappy realized that the big rock was very, very close at this point, and it would almost catch up to them. So they started to run again. They ran again and started to ask the creatures of the prairies if they could help. Sparrow, mouse, hare, help me, help me. But the creatures of the prairies watched on and shook their head. No. You've tricked us too many times, Nappy. We won't help you this time. And just as the big rock was about to roll over Nappy, Nappy looked up to the sky and saw that there was a bird in the sky, a giant bird with wings that blotted out the sun for a moment. Nappy knew that the bird was the Thunderbird. And with a great Thunderbird summoned lightning to hit the top of this big rock and crack it into two pieces. The two pieces rolled right past Nappy and settled down in the prairies. It was at this point that Nappy looked up and saw that the Thunderbird flew off back towards the Rocky Mountains in the west. And Nappy knew that they had learned a valuable lesson that day, not to dishonor others. And they gave thanks to the Thunderbird. So Nappy began to dance. And Nappy pulled out their flute and they played a song, giving thanks to the land, thanks to the lesson they had learned, and thank you to the Thunderbird. The song went a little bit like this. And that is the story of the big rock, Okotoks. As you see from the picture, you might see that it's split in two pieces. And in the middle is where the Thunderbird's lightning struck it. Now, I just want to give a quick recognition to this story being an adaptation of one that goes back to the Blackfoot people of this area. And I found this story actually through the government of Alberta's online resources about the big rock. I had known about glacial erratics before, but I hadn't known that this story accompanied the rock and that the Blackfoot people used the rock as a marker for them to know that there was a river crossing nearby whenever they were following the bison of the prairies. So it's actually got a lot of beautiful, beautiful history and story behind it. And this adaptation was just one of the many adaptations of which speak to this big rock. So thank you all for listening, and thank you for Schooled and Caylin and Chris and Danny for this opportunity. I'm a new storyteller and I'm loving it so far.
Thank you, Teague. That was phenomenal.
Yeah, awesome. I love stories like that connects certain big sort of rocky features or landscape features to the mythic world. And the landscape, it's just, I particularly like those kind of stories. And when you can say, look, and the rocks were split in the middle by the lightning, and the kids or even grown-ups like, really?
Yeah.
Is that a true story? It's like, yeah, it is. Yeah, nice one. Well told too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I loved the shining of the light, the sunlight.
Yeah, yeah, I was like, I know it's so bright through my morning window here. I thought, that'll be fun just to open that up and actually embody the bright light that Nappy was feeling from the sun. And I did start sweating. I was like, whoa, it's pretty hot in here.
I want to keep discussing this a little more, but I want to put it out to those who are watching us live. If you have questions or thoughts about connections you're making with these stories, please put them in the comments and I can actually show them on the screen and we can center our discussion around your thoughts, not just ours. So I want to put that out there for those who are with us live.
Oh, hey, Theo. One of my forest school students is watching. That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Teague, I love that story. You just seem to embody the land in the story. I really got a sense of that. And it's really interesting to listen to somebody from, you know, a different place with these different animals and a different landscape really be that attached to the land through their story. Because I don't know, like a lot of my stories have badger and wolf and fox, and in my mind I could see it, like the English landscape, but in your story then I could really get a visual of where you are and where your story was from. So yeah, and I love the sound of the rolling rock. That was amazing. It really grabbed my attention as suddenly the rock would move, and the sound that you gave to the rock moving was so accurate that, yeah, really felt part of the story at that point. It was great.
Oh, thank you so much.
I think the sound aspect really stuck out for me too, and also thinking about like when you did the howl and the animal noises, and just thinking about how we can listen to the sounds of things that are happening outside, not just the animals. I know we talk about bird song, or that's highlighted a lot, but thinking about the sounds that stones make as they roll across the ground, and just noticing those little details when we're out and about.
Yeah. That's actually been a big theme to me in I mentioned my Qigong practice. It's a mindful movement practice that really ties into what Chris was saying, is this connection that we all feel. And one of the things I've been really connecting with recently is the idea is that we're not just connected to the living things, but we're connected to these things like rocks. We're connected to the particles of the air. So I'm trying to really focus in on those connections recently, because I've been feeling so connected to the living things lately, which is great. But I want to connect a little bit more with just like placing my hand on the big rock and feeling this ancient knowledge that's held within it, or it's just smelling the smell of grass and the soil and the smell of the air and the feel of water, the texture of the Bow River, the texture of the Elbow River, the places that surround me here.
We're getting some comments saying how this could be connected to other movement practices like yoga and versions of this with kids as they act out the story physically as it unfolds. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I've actually done a lot of youth yoga practice as when I got my youth yoga training. I started incorporating animal journeys and animal transformations, and that's something that I find children, and as myself especially, really connect with. So it's a great match of our two passions. I felt like I've been connected to wolves my entire life. Like I've actually used to have nightmares and then started having really good dreams about wolves. And then I thought I was a werewolf at one point. And then it's like, got all these transformations. So it's great that I can connect with it, but also the children get right into it. They connect to whatever animal and they can pose like it. They can manipulate their body and make the sounds like the animal. And really, I think that's the first step towards conservation of said animal, conservation of creatures, is to really embody that animal and take on that shape, because you can't really relate to them until you get in their body.
Yeah.
I just had a comment on Philip made a comment there about telling a story about something that is present in the area, and I think as nature storytellers it's a really powerful tool that we have, and it's hard to do it here in this format, but one thing I love to do is have children buy something that is in the story, and it really connects them with it and really draws them into being not only a part of the story but a part of that place as well. I've almost seen stories kind of just kind of hug children in, as you talk about the oak tree that is right there behind, or this next story that I'm going to tell. One thing that I do in it is I talk about a meeting, and I always say to the children that we the reason why we chose this place for the story is because this is the space where they met, and the bear was where you are, and the fox was where you
That's
are.
powerful.
Hedgehog, and I've seen children's faces with that. They become the animal almost. And they're like, wow, this is where it happened. And in terms of connecting story with people with place, I think it's a really powerful tool, and I love using that and doing that.
Yeah, fantastic. Some really amazing comments coming through. I'm trying to post them as they come and as they connect to the discussions that we're having. So thank you all for joining in. It's phenomenal.
Hey, Emmeline, I saw that another one of my children from forest school is watching, so I thought I'd say hey.
That's awesome. I love that we can connect with the people that you work with too.
Yeah, I really miss the being with the children, so it's kind of like nice to engage with them in any way possible, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm conscious that I'm just giving a little warning, but for me, I actually love it. I think our live stream today is going to go longer than an hour. And I'm okay with that if you all are, and if people need to dip in and out and come and watch the recording later, that's fine. But I just wanted to continue the slower pace and not rush us to finish this in an hour.
Cool. Well, I've got something I want to say then.
Yeah.
Which is off the back of the story and the activities that kind of came to mind, that what people can do at home off the back of the story. And one of the things that I liked about the story was that at the beginning, the sort of booby traps and the tricks that the Nappy would be playing on the other characters. And that's one of the things that I've often encouraged my children to do, is to sort of sneak up on me around the house, or to sort of keep my awareness alive, because we're so used to going out the bedroom, walking down the corridor, going into the kitchen, doing a thing, and we don't pay attention to just the little things. And so sometimes it can be fun to just have just move something slightly so that it's in a different place, or just little things that aren't going to cause anyone any harm, but are still testing our awareness as we are in our little boxes at the moment a lot of the time. And we need things to keep us alive and engaged. So.
Wow, that's really powerful for me with the story, because I never had made that connection with the character. I kind of was thinking, oh, they're just a trickster. They don't have much use in this story. They need to not be a trickster anymore. But now I'm like, oh, they have such power in doing those small little tricks to keep people on their toes and keep people alive, really. Adding interest to the world around them.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is great. So much food for thought. Well, I'm wondering if we're ready to move on to story number 2 with Danny.
Yeah, we can do that. I'm ready.
Okay, thank you, Teague. Again, that was wonderful to have you join us.
Thank you, Teague.
A wonderful story. And you'll be back with us for the next discussion, so don't go anywhere. All right, the floor is yours, Danny.
Hey, everyone. Nice to see so many familiar names popping up on there. It's really nice that we seem to be developing a community of storytellers and story listeners as well. So thanks again for joining us. This week I've been out in the mornings walking on the hills, and I know everybody's in lockdown and have been for a while, but with this little bit of exercise time that we're given every day, I'm seeing more and more people out on the hills, which is great. For years we've been trying to connect people with nature, and I feel like this is a great opportunity where people are really taking to that. But it also made me think of a story that I wanted to share with you all. And I thought, seeing as there are so many people out walking at the moment, then this would be a great time to get you all onto a quest. Now, this is a quest that I have been on for a long time, since I was about 6. I was told this story by a wise old man, who was also told this story by a wise old lady. And both of these people had been on this quest too. But if I tell you this story, you have to agree to join the quest as well. Do we agree? Yes, I can see you all virtually nodding. And if you are an educator, you have to tell this story and get all the people that you know onto this quest as well. So this story is very, very old. And it's from a time when the whole of the UK was covered in thick forest. But the trees weren't like the trees that we see today. You see, the trees in this forest were very, 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 very tall. So tall that the tops of them would disappear into the clouds. And they were very, very, very wide as well. 15 or 20 people holding hands wouldn't get around the base of one of the single trees. And at the bottom of the trees, there was long, tall grass that would sway in the wind. And in the grass were beautiful flowers of all different colours. And on the flowers were bees and butterflies and wasps and dragonflies. But if you just grabbed the grass and peered down into the forest, you could see that there were all kinds of creatures living there. There was the woodpecker and the wood pigeon, hedgehogs, snakes, mice, fox, badger, deer, wolf and bear, all living in the forest. But it wasn't just trees and flowers and insects and animals that lived in this forest. You see, there was something else, somebody else. There was also a lady that lived in this forest too. And this lady was very, very, very tall, much taller than me, but not as tall as the trees. She had big red bushy hair that came all the way down her back. Some people said that the hair was so bushy that some of the birds would nest inside her hair. She also wore a long green cloak that went all the way down to the ground. And nobody saw her feet. Some people said she didn't have feet at all because she would just glide through the forest, never leaving a single footprint behind. And this lady, she had many, many magical powers. She had the power to talk to the trees, and the trees would talk back to her. She had the powers to talk to the animals, and they would talk back too. She also had the power to control the weather. She would decide when it would rain, when the sun would shine, when the wind would blow, when the snow would fall. She even had the power to decide when it was daytime and when it was nighttime. And you might be wondering why she had all of these powers. Well, she had all of these powers because on her finger, she wore a ring like no other ring anybody had ever seen before. It was all of the colours of the rainbow and some colours that we've forgotten. In the daytime, it would shine like the sun, and at night time, it would sparkle like the stars. And they also said that it was made from a very, very special metal, a metal where when the lady rubbed it, it would make a sound. And legend has it that when the lady rubbed the ring, more of the magical power was released. Now, the lady wore the ring on this finger. She knew how important it was. She knew that with the right amount of rain and sun and snow and wind, that the earth was safe and locked in this perfect balance. She knew that if it got into the wrong hands, all kinds of terrible things could happen. If somebody took the ring and made it rain and rain and rain, we would be faced with floods. If somebody took the ring and made it hot, we would be faced with droughts. Too much wind would blow down the forest, and too much snow would lock us into an ice age. So the lady wore the ring on this finger, and she never took it off until one day. One day the lady was gliding through the forest when a little robin came and it landed on her shoulder, and it began to speak to her. He said, "Lady of the forest, lady of the ring, be careful with the ring. Somebody is looking for it and somebody wants to steal it for themselves." And the lady said, "But who would steal the ring and why?" And the robin explained. The robin said, "There is a short man with a long crooked nose and a purple cloak with a big hood and a stick. And he's walking through the forest looking for the ring. He wears his hood because the sunshine hurts his eyes, and he wants to steal the ring and turn the world into a forever night, where there's never any sunrise and never any sunset, just always pitch black." Now the lady knew how bad this would be. She knew that if it was just always nighttime, that the daytime animals wouldn't be able to come out. And if it was always nighttime, the nocturnal animals would have no time to rest. She also knew that if it was always nighttime, there would be no sun. And if there would be no sun, then nothing would grow. And if nothing would grow, then there would be nothing to eat. So the lady knew how bad this would be. So she called a meeting of all of the woodland creatures together. And they all sat around. And she said, "Creatures of the forest, I need your help. Somebody is looking for the ring. Somebody wants to steal it for themselves." She said, "Creatures who live underground, like the badger and the rabbit and the fox and the mole, will you take the ring and hide it deep, deep down in your underground homes?" And the underground creatures looked at the lady and they said, "No, we don't want the ring. We don't want the man coming digging in our homes looking for the ring. You must keep it for yourself." So the lady looked to the animals who lived in the tops of the trees, like the wood pigeon and the owls and the bats and the squirrels. She said, "Will you take the ring and hide it way, way, way at the top of the trees in your nests and in your trays? For there the man will never find it." But the creatures of the treetops said, "No, we don't want the ring. The man will come climbing the trees and steal it and break our nests up. Keep the ring to yourself." So the lady stood up, and with a tear rolling down her face, she headed off into the distance and disappeared into the trees. And she wasn't gone for long. But when she returned to the animals, the magical ring was gone. The creatures of the forest said, "What have you done with the ring? You know of its importance." And the lady looked at them all and she said, "Yes, the magical ring is so, so important. And because you wouldn't help me, I had to hide the ring myself. Somewhere here, somewhere in this forest." And we know that still to this very day, that magical ring is hidden. Because last night when you all went to bed, it went dark. And this morning when you woke, it was light again. And as long as there is dark and light and day and night, then the magical ring is safe. But the quest that I invited you on, that you agreed to come on, is a quest to find this ring. For it is not safe out there with the man prowling for it. We have to find it. So the next time that you're out on your walk, up on the hills or through the forest or wherever you may be, keep your eyes and your ears out for the ring. And that is the end of the story.
Nice.
Nice one. Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I
So
really
now
love your
you're all
character
into the
description.
story. Sorry, Teague.
Oh, good. I was just saying, I really love your character description. I can immediately envision the characters when you describe them as you do.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I was also enjoying the way that when you were talking about the different creatures, that your eyes led to the different places, like the hedgehog and the deer was over there, and the wood pigeon was up there, and the woodpecker was up there, and that thing of getting people's imagination or whatever it is, attention, widening like that. It's great. Good storytelling thing. Yeah.
The Chris, you didn't hear this before, and I guess people who are listening to, I was explaining why I wrote that story. I wrote it many, many years ago after observing an outdoor education session where the leader was trying to get the children to do a scavenger hunt, and it was raining, and all of the papers that the scavenger hunt were on, they were all getting wet, and all the children didn't want to do the scavenger hunt. They just wanted to play and climb trees and build dens. And the teacher who was there was getting really angry because the children weren't doing what they were supposed to, and the leader was getting really angry because all these materials were getting ruined. And I just remember thinking, there's got to be a better way to get children to seek and search than to give them a piece of paper and ask them to do a scavenger hunt. So I started telling that story, and it's had a life of its own. I've told it all over, everywhere that I go. I always tell that story. And one of my favorite little things about that story is I was shopping in, I don't know, maybe Asda or Tesco or somewhere, and I was walking along my basket, and I heard this like screech of "Daddy, Daddy!" And I looked, and two girls who I'd told the story came running down, and they said, "It isn't in Flamingo Land." And I said, "Oh," and they said, "The magic ring. We went to Flamingo Land and we looked everywhere. It isn't there." So I was like, awesome. So yeah, it's had a life of its own just by giving people permission to seek and search for this ring. So yeah.
I love what people are saying just about that, like seeking and searching and the inspiration to do it. And I just love some of the comments of like, you don't need to find the ring. Mother Earth is watching over it. And and the seeking and finding doesn't mean we have to like find something for ourselves. It could just be allowing it to be there, but acknowledging its presence.
Yeah, and if I can have another moment just to explain a little bit about when I wrote that story, I was actually reading a book called The Enemy of Nature. I don't know if any of you read that book. It's quite the read, but it's all about capitalism and its impact on the natural world. And when I wrote that story, the old man, he was my version of capitalism, and the magical ring is the ring of life, and then the lady, of course, is Mother Nature, and then the animals and the children are the guardians of the ring in a way. So that was my own way of processing quite a complex book that I was reading about through my own story writing and storytelling. So
good. And I also like that nowadays there has been talk, I don't know a lot about it yet, but talking about donut economics and how that sort of helps feed things back and back. as a model, and that's like the ring in a way. A donut is like a ring, isn't it? So
Yeah, of course.
I have that book on my coffee table right now.
Oh, you do?
What, donut economics?
Yeah, by
Or-
Kate Raworth. Yeah, it's right there. I see it.
Oh.
Donut economics.
Yeah.
I love anything involving a ring, as someone mentioned in the comments, the Tolkien-esque aspect of it. I've got the map of Middle Earth just over my bed over there.
Nice. Yes.
Cool.
And there's a space at our Common Digs park that we run out of. It's filled with these gnarled old willows, and I was thinking, that idea of like looking for something in the willows is something that we do with looking for kind of fairies or a leprechaun or gnomes and that sort of thing. But this idea of the ring too could be a very cool an item to be looking for in those willows.
Well, you agreed to the quest, Teague, so you got.
Oh yeah, I was nodding along.
Gotta go.
Yeah, every time I go outside into kind of wild spaces, I'm looking for curious oddities, new things that I've never seen before. So that's almost my version of the ring. Is what is this little tiny evergreen ground cover plant I've never seen before? It looks like a lily pad, but it's kind of not. It's not near marshland. What's going on? Yeah.
Lots of great ideas. I'm constantly learning about the new things because I'm constantly moving. So everywhere I go, I'm like, okay, gotta meet these new beings all over again, But there's a lot of parallels too. I think that's what I've really enjoyed about moving from place to place, and different climates. I've lived in tropical places, and now I'm in a northern climate. I've lived in deserts, and there are things that are sort of everywhere. And it's been so lovely to find that connection, like dandelions, is one of those things where no matter where we are, things might look a little different, and there might be some things that are not the same, but there are threads that connect us all together. So that's one benefit of being a mover.
Yeah, definitely. A mover and a shaker. Cool. Shall I? In a way, it leads on to the next story. Can I move it on?
Yeah, perfect.
The next bit.
Yes,
I can do that. Which is okay. Here we go. This next story is I thought I'd take a risk actually today and tell a personal story of my own sort of journey, and it's a journey to finding an amount of stillness in which some frogs could feel safe enough to speak. And the reason that I wanted to talk about this story is because I was given this book this week, Time to Think, Listening to Ignite the Human Mind by Nancy Klein. And it's very much about listening and asking incisive questions, and about how that we can, if we create the right space, then people will often come up with their own solutions to their problems just by providing a sort of a judgment-free listening space. And for some reason, it reminded me of a time when I was in New Zealand. And what I thought I was going to tell as a story was a story that I was going to tell this week was an fortunately story. There are many of these different stories around the world, and one of the ones I tell that comes from China, where supposedly there's an old man and his son and his grandson, and they're all sort of living in this little house, and these various different things, these fortunately and unfortunately events happen. I mean, we all have them. We've been locked down, haven't we, for a little while? So there's the unfortunately, we've all got to stay at home a lot. But fortunately, it means that a lot of us don't have to drive about the place so much. Unfortunately, it means that I don't get to go and see the kids that I work with quite a lot, and so on. There's always, the moral of that story was there's no good or bad. There's just, it is how it is. People get really upset about, oh no, this is terrible, everything's going to die. And then actually it's not all that bad, and it's just how it is. So I thought I'd tell a little story about a didgeridoo, a quest that I went on to go and find a didgeridoo. Many years ago, when I was in the sort of mid 1990s, I started to learn to play the didgeridoo. And previously to that, I'd lived in Plymouth at college with a friend who then got married to a lady who lived in Hawaii. And so after college, the two of them left to go and live in Hana on Maui in Hawaii. And I had started to learn to play the didgeridoo. And I thought, right, one of the things I've got to do is go on a quest to Australia to go and get a didgeridoo. And so I saved up. Unfortunately, I had enough money to be able to buy a plane ticket. So I had friends in Hawaii, so I thought, right, I'm going to go and drop in and see them. I also have a sister, and we had planned to meet in New Zealand. And so off I went to Hawaii, landed there, had a great time for, I think, about 3 weeks, exploring the heat of Hawaii. And but whilst I was there, I needed to make a couple of phone calls to New Zealand, to some people that I'd been given the contacts of. I didn't know many people there. I'd never really been there before, but just really wanted to go. So I tried calling from Hawaii a couple of times, but unfortunately, I couldn't get through. There was no answer. It just rang and rang for both of these numbers, or the number didn't seem to work. And I thought, okay, whatever, things will work out. And then I spoke to my sister and I said, are you ready to come to New Zealand? I'll see you there. And she said, unfortunately, I can't come. There are things that have happened. I'm sorry. But I'm sure you're a grown-up bloke. You can go and have an adventure on your own. It'd be easier to move around. So, okay, well, fortunately, that was the case. Unfortunately, my sister had the guidebook to New Zealand because she was trying to work out what she wanted to do, and I didn't have the guidebook anymore. So unfortunately, when I arrived in New Zealand, I didn't really know where I was going to go. Fortunately, I still had my notebook with the phone number of these people I was going to go and see. So I got off the plane, and the first thing I did whilst I was waiting for my baggage to come through was to ring up. And again, the numbers didn't work. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll try when I get into the centre of town. So I went to Auckland, which is the capital. I went into the main high street to go and find a backpacker's place to go and stay for the night. Walking down the street, I found a phone box. I thought, great. Put my money belt on the top of the phone, got some coins out, got my notebook out, and put some money in the phone. I tried ringing, and it didn't work. So I thought I put my money back in my bag, or put it back on again. But unfortunately, I didn't. I left it on top of the phone. So I turned around because I was in a huff, and I thought, right, I must go and get a phone card because money was going through the phone and coming out. So, okay, I'll go and get a phone card, and then I can make the phone calls using that. So I walked back up the street 50 yards to the newsagent. Before I'd even got into the newsagent, I thought, oh no, I have left my money belt on top of the phone. So I went back out. Money belt had gone. That had all of my money that I'd saved up for my part of the trip in New Zealand. All gone. Thankfully, my passport and my extra money for Australia was in my big rucksack on my back. But that was it. The phone numbers, they weren't working. I now had very little money to move around New Zealand. So I was in that sort of dark tea time of like, oh my goodness, I am completely in the other side of the world. Nobody that I know, I don't know anybody here at all, and the contacts that I did have didn't work. Unfortunately, this is a terrible thing. And I thought, I'll remember that story. Unfortunately, fortunately, but there's bound to be something good that will come along. So anyway, I went into the backpacker's place, and they were happy for me to give them a little bit of money, and then for me to wire home and get a bit more money sent, so I could stay for my pay for my stay there for a couple of days. And I went downstairs and looked in a hippie bookshop that was open for a place that I could go and work and pay for, for a few weeks. I could pay for my stay by doing some work. It's called woofing. Don't know if anybody's ever done that around the world, willing workers on organic farms. And I found this retreat centre in a place called Coromandel Peninsula, and I thought, fantastic, it looks beautiful. I can't go all the way around the South Island and the North Island like I was hoping to. I'm just going to focus on this one little place. And so I phoned them up. When I phoned them up, this lady said, unfortunately, we are closed for the winter holidays. But fortunately, I like the sound of your voice. And yeah, come on over anyway. I'm sure we'll find something for you to do. There's plenty, tidying up the log shed and sweeping up and things. There's little things that I'm sure you can do. Come on over whenever you're ready. It's like, oh, thank you so much. So I had enough ticket money to buy a bus ticket. And the next day, early in the morning, I had the whole day to get to this place, which wasn't too far away. Set off on the bus, got to a place which was about 3/4 of the way. And then I had to hitch the last bit. Unfortunately, when I got off the bus, I only had to wait about 3/4 of an hour for somebody who gave me a lift. And he said, fortunately, I can give you a lift most of the way. Unfortunately, my journey leaves me about 3 or 4 miles short, but I'll drop you there, and it's a really nice walk along the coast, along the road. You'll love it. So drop you off there. Unfortunately, this guy was a complete boy racer, and I scared the pants off me as he drove, around all these windy lanes and roads along the coast road towards the Coromandel Peninsula. Fortunately, he let me out on the side of the road, and I still had the afternoon to go. And I was just beginning to walk along the road towards this retreat centre when a guy calls me and he says, all right, mate, what are you doing? Where are you going? And I look around, and there's this guy. He's obviously Maori or half Maori, walking along the road with a big bag on his shoulder. And so we get chatting, and it turns out he's just come from England, recently married, but now he's back in New Zealand for a bit, and he just has to go walkabout. And he's got beer, he's got chicken, he's got potatoes, he's got loads of stuff in his bag. And he's like, come on, let's just sit down on the beach. I'm about to have a feast. And as we were talking, we'd seen some people going off and collecting mussels because the tide was out. So fortunately, we were able to go and pick up a whole load of mussels. I got a fire going, and we cooked some dinner, and we had a great chat for like 3 or 4 hours. And I felt like, after having arrived in New Zealand with a sort of horrible, in a way, an unfortunate welcome, here was that fortunate welcome of somebody born from the land and giving me the welcome. So the fortunately carried on, and I said goodbye, and I walked up the road, and it got mistier and mistier and it was getting darker, and I was getting worried. I was thinking, oh no, am I going to get to this place on time? I've got this big heavy bag on my back. And eventually, fortunately, before it got dark, because I didn't have a torch or a phone or anything in those days, there was a sign that said Mana Retreat Centre. So I went up the road towards this Mana Retreat Centre, and unfortunately, they had already had their dinner, but fortunately, there was a bit of food left over. So the host sorted out a little bit of food for me. I was ever so grateful, and I had a little room to stay in. So I felt like, I can really land, and I can be at sort of peace here for a couple of weeks, and I'll just settle in. And in those days, I was a smoker then. Occasionally, I wouldn't have many, but occasionally I'd like to go and sit outside and just enjoy the relaxing feeling of just having a cigarette. Not that I enjoy it anymore at all. But then, after I'd finished washing up, I went outside, and it was all misty still, and there was this kind of veranda out the back of this retreat centre. And I heard this funny sound. It was like this. It was like, great, there's cows here too. Excellent. And so I sort of started walking along the veranda. It creaked a bit, and as I got further down this veranda, down the side of the house, then suddenly this sort of cow sound stopped. I thought, what? There were cows in the mist, just, not that close, but all around. Where have they vanished? What has gone on? Anyway, I stopped and I listened and looked around and took a couple of paces and noticed that in this kind of veranda, cut into the wood of the veranda, was a pond. And it's quite a nice big pond with rocks in it and various other things. And I thought, wow, this is a really nice place. So I just sort of sat down and I thought, I wonder what I could do to make those cows feel like I'm at home and that I'm just one of them. It's safe. I thought, I could maybe make a little cow sound. So I sort of thought, right, made one of these sounds. And then within a couple of moments, from the pond, not from the landscape beyond, came all these kind of chorus of little cow sounds. It's like, moo, moo, moo. And in the pond were a whole bunch of frogs that sort of make cow sounds. And so whenever I went out for the next 2 weeks that I was staying there, I'd walk out onto the balcony or onto the veranda, and I'd hear these funny sounds of the frogs kind of making cow noises, but they would stop whenever I got a bit close. So as soon as they stopped, I would just go, and then they'd go, oh, it's that big tall frog with long legs, he's all right. And they'd all start kind of mooing again. So I don't know, that was my story of the frogs, and how sometimes if you just get into the right place, then it provides a nice listening environment for other creatures and other people to feel safe. And I did manage to get to Australia after that, and I did buy myself a didgeridoo. I didn't actually buy this one, but I thought I would play it anyway, because unfortunately the other didgeridoo is far away, whereas this one fortunately fits into this room and you can play it right in front of the screen. Thank you very much for listening. Story of the frog.
Nice.
So there we are. I went on a bit, didn't I? Sorry, it's a bit after 5.
It was great. It was great.
I really, really love that you told a personal story, Chris, because it's been on my mind of something that I wanted to showcase within this storytelling collaboration of we've been telling really imaginative stories, and those have a really wonderful aspect to them of, bringing out things that we don't necessarily, I guess, like see with the eyes that we use in the real world. And connect us to things that are a bit beyond. But I also think there's so much value in our personal stories, and it breaks down that barrier of feeling like I'm not a storyteller, because the reality is we all are storytellers. We tell our, family members, our friends, our stories every single day when we talk about what just happened to us. And I've also found with older children, the imaginative stuff, I've had groups where I've been with them for a couple of years, and as they grow up, they sort of get bored of like, we know that's not real. And I started to turn to telling personal stories and capture them again into the process of storytelling. So yeah. I'm grateful that you did that.
Me too, Chris.
Thank you.
People often say, I can't tell stories, I'm afraid of telling stories. I think we spoke about it in the previous ones as well, and I think it was lovely for you to share a personal story, just to give everyone the example that we are all storytellers and we all have stories to tell. I always thought that there's 3 types of stories. There's a personal story, like a fairy tale that somebody else has written, and then our own made up stories. That's what I always kind of think in terms of stories. And I think, yeah, we've probably spoken. We've done our own made up stories, and we've done other stories that we've heard other people tell. And you kind of completed the trio there by adding a personal story in as well. So thank you. And those frogs, they are clearly bullfrogs. Yeah.
They must be bullfrogs.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. What a great story as well. All of that in one day. Was that all one day, that story?
2 days, 2 or 3 days actually.
Yeah.
Sort of getting from Hawaii to Auckland to that retreat centre. Yeah.
I love how when you're traveling, things like that just happen. And you can live a whole year's worth in 2 days just by not having a plan and going with the flow. But I love that as well, the fortunate, unfortunate, because it's a lovely way to put across the idea of, there's every cloud has a silver lining, and it's about mindset and the places that we find ourselves in. Sometimes they're hard, but there's always a lesson there as well. So yeah, I like the way you delivered that. Fortunate, unfortunate. I'll use that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I thought that would be a good thing for people to talk about, really, in this time. Probably people already are. I know that we're sort of talking about it at home a little bit, slightly, the good things and the bad things about being in lockdown. And it's good to revisit them and to have those sort of talk about those stories ourselves about when good things or bad things happen. Good, bad. Yeah.
I've always been more of an imaginative storyteller myself, so it's awesome to hear the more personal story grounded in more reality. I'll have to think about that more as a form of storytelling. I know that humans just in general are born storytellers, and our whole cultures are built on stories. And it's actually made me think of many of these people my friends and family that have told me many things, and I've been listening to. They've been just telling me stories this whole time, like beautiful stories of their lives, and it's it's great to acknowledge those as stories as well.
I'm loving how people are really, having that same sort of reflection of how personal stories can be used, and how someone just wrote, I can use the frog story on a Zoom call with 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
You can adapt, and especially when it's a personal story of yours, I find maybe it could be easier to adapt because we already adapt to when we speak to a 3-year-old versus when we speak to somebody that's our age or older. And so having those stories as something to share and finding ways to share, you wouldn't have told it the way that you just told it to us, Chris, to a 3-year-old, but you could tell a version of that to a 3-year-old. So
yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, different ways of thinking about storytelling.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you guys ever thought of sorry, go ahead, Chris.
What ages do you guys generally pitch your stories to? In your imagination, when you're telling a story, sort of what age do you pitch at?
All ages for me. I imagine a crowd of families with the parents at the back and the children at the front. That's what I imagine.
Nice.
I think I've had mixed. I think really like preschool children can be really hard. Well, it's not that they're hard, they're just brutal. When they've had enough, they just get up and wander off. And I've had a few situations where I've gathered them all in and I'm going to tell you this really good story, and they all look at you expectantly, and then 2 run off, and then another one runs off, and then another, and it's just you and this one child, and you're trying your best, and they get up, and then you're just like finishing the story on my own in the woods. So I've had that experience before. I find that I'd say between age 4 and 7, I find it that you get that magical kind of look where they're gazing into another world through you. And then I think, Caylin, like you said, there's a period preteen, teen, where it's, again, the stories have to change a lot to grab their attention. And then I found when we get to adults, they love the stories as much as the 6 and the 7-year-olds do. So it's an interesting, I made some interesting observations with it, but definitely storytelling style has to change for some groups, without a doubt. What about you, Chris?
I tend to sort of generally imagine that it's the story's going out to an 8-year-old, roughly, and I know that I like that thing that Teague has there as well, and that's what I'm doing online here now. Is sort of imagining sort of youngsters and old people, or older people, a nice mixture with the kind of older ones at the back and stuff. And I think the bit that I find hard is engaging teenagers with my stories, and unless I sort of link it with music, or it's a joke, or something, that's an area I find hard to unlock, in terms of that thing of where people are gazing into another world through the story. Finding that sort of, I don't even know what the word is, but it's like, as you say, it's like an opening. Find an opening, a way in to open through with the story. I'm not sure.
I've had programs where I have tried to include teenagers because they felt like the nature of the program wasn't applicable to teenagers, and so I created more of a youth assistant role for them to join in, which I mean, they did have more responsibility within the program because they could and wanted it, but there was also plenty of time for them to just play and engage in the with the natural world in similar ways to the way the younger children were. But it's been a thought of, and I have had some situations where I've invited them to tell a story, and for them, it's like an avenue in, because they might then tell an imaginative story because it's for the children. But by telling the story, they're engaging with it themselves too. So, and some will do that, some definitely won't, but it's one avenue.
Yeah. I did a similar thing where I asked people to write or tell a story, and one kid did this story, and it was quite gory, and I wouldn't normally tell gory stories, but I was giving feedback, and I was really complimentary of it, and this boy was so excited. He said, "Dad, Danny loves gore. He loves gore in his stories." And yeah, I don't know if we need more gore in our stories to that early teenage. I don't know, teenage. I don't know if I've ever written a story with gore. Maybe I'll do it next week.
Yeah.
We'll start accommodating all sorts of audiences. Demonstrate, as Forever Green Forest School is saying, if you're engaging as you all are, I can imagine a story can work for a broad age range. Well, let's we're starting to demonstrate how we can adapt and tell for lots of different people and ages.
I think knowing your audience is a really big part of connecting with them. So just having those relationships, and when you're trying to do something with a group of teenagers that you've never met before, I think the first step is really just getting to know them if possible, spending time with them, hearing their stories, in the sense that what's something that you enjoy doing? What do you enjoy doing inside? What do you enjoy doing outside? Tell me a story about your family, that sort of thing. And then you can start to think about, well, what's some of the topics that might actually appeal to this group?
Absolutely.
I've also seen, there's so much to talk about this, but I've also seen some people engage with young people through comic strips, so and through art. So they start to tell their stories, but through a way that's through graphics, or even digitally, as opposed to actually drawing. And that's a form of storytelling that they can be more inclined to want to engage with.
Yeah, we're doing a little creative thing at Weeby Kids this week, where we're asking people to write or do a comic or an audio for a story, because some people think if you say, can you write a story, it can be a barrier straight away for them, and people may just be more comfortable telling it or drawing it. So I think as storytellers, or as people encouraging others to be storytellers, to keep as many of those avenues open as possible is key. I often say to children, we all have a story in us, whatever it might be. We've just got to find a way of getting it out. Whatever suits, then just find your way. It could be telling it to your dog, as I saw Forever Green Forest School mentioned there, or it could be doing a comic, or it could be improv dance, or however. Although I'm not going to do improv dance next week.
That'll be in 2 weeks. Stay tuned, everyone. I'm conscious that we're getting on time, and I'm eager to get out into the sunshine. I don't know about how you all are feeling, but this has been such a lovely, again, storytelling session. And Teague, it's been wonderful to have you part of this, both for telling your story and for your perspective with the discussions. I'm going to try to convince you to come back. So stay on this.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. So
let's talk. Don't go anywhere. But yeah, anyone else has any final thoughts before we end the live stream for today?
Just really lovely to be on this again with everybody, and the comments are great. I think having that little questions and coming across has been really good this week as well. It feels like we're engaged with everybody too in a new level. So yeah, thank you for those questions. And yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I would just say thank you to everyone who's watching, and thank you to all those who will be watching when it's not live and just on YouTube or other formats.
Yeah, I'm just trying to quickly showcase we've got lots of thank yous coming in from everybody, and I'm just highlighting how wonderful it's been. I know I haven't told a story this week, and part of me misses that, but it's also been really lovely to be able to be a little bit more behind the scenes and read your comments and get to interact more with you. So there's value in that too. So thank you for adding your comments and being part of these discussions, and for your gratitude as well. And we hope to see you all again next week. So take care, and we'll
take care.
see you soon.
Yeah, see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.